So today, as I mentioned at the top, I want to talk about alterations. And this is a subject that is kind of near and dear to my heart for a few different reasons. First of all, I grew up with a mom and a grandmother who knew how to sew, who did sew, who could modify some things. If we found something that didn't quite fit, they were capable of, kind of basic alterations. Certainly learned how to sew on a button and learned to understand that a zipper could be replaced, or that, something could be modified, that a hem could be shortened, that the hem should be straight. I am appreciative of the fact that my mom and my grandmother knew enough to kind of instill in me the idea that you can make clothing, although I've really not ever done that except in home ec class where I had to make a t-shirt. And once a long, long time ago when Greta was in kindergarten, I made her a little jumper. I really don't sew clothing. I sew more home goods, kind of square things, rectangles, curtains and duvet covers and pillowcases and that sort of thing. But I like knowing how to sew. I like understanding sewing. I then went on to work lots and lots of years of retail. I worked in the couture salon at Neiman Marcus. For those of you not familiar, the couture salon at Neiman Marcus is a pretty heavy-hitting upper level retail situation with Chanel and Armani and St. John and all the better brands. And we had a very large alterations team and we called on them regularly. There was almost nothing sold in the couture salon that was not altered to fit the body of the customer pretty perfectly. Whether it was a Chanel jacket and skirt or a pair of trousers from Armani that were being completely dismantled and basically remade kind of from the ground up in order to fit the body of the client who was lucky enough to be purchasing them. So I really learned how, by watching the alterations team come in with their tools and really get, kind of in there with the garment and pin it and nip and tuck and make it really truly look like a work of art on any different body type, whether they were letting out seams or taking in seams, bringing up hems, letting out hems. It was fascinating to watch. And I learned to appreciate it. The tailors and the seamstresses are trained in such an art, as far as I'm concerned, of really truly understanding how to make a garment work. And they can really discern kind of at a glance whether something will work or not work, or what tweaks and modifications need to be made in order to make it kind of the perfect garment for a person. And so I learned to just kind of love the idea of alterations. I don't alter much on, of my own clothing. I certainly can change a button. I can cut off a pair of jeans and make them a shorter length and leave the raw hem. I recently shortened a pair of Carhartt jeans that Peter had thrifted. So I know how to do it, but I don't love to do it. I'm not super skilled at it. I would never rebuild a blazer. My skill in alterations is pretty much starts and ends at kind of shortening things, whether it's a blouse that's too long when I purchase it, or whether it's a hem on a pant or a cuff length. I'm capable of that and I'm comfortable doing that. Beyond that, I do take it to the experts. Alterations tends to kind of be a thing where you have a strong feeling kind of one way or the other, either pro or con altering or taking things to the tailor. And I think that for so many women and so many of the clients who I work with, alterations are a way to feel bad about yourself, because there's this notion, foolish notion, that clothing, ready-to-wear clothing, should fit off the rack pretty perfectly. And if it doesn't, there is something wrong with you. If you need to have a garment tailored, even if it's just the length is too long and you need to have it shortened, then you're too short. We adopt this idea that there's something wrong with us, that our body isn't good enough, because if it was, then the clothing would fit perfectly right off the rack. And that could not be further from the truth, but it is kind of a mindset game that needs to be investigated and unwound, because I have worked with enough women in closets and fitting rooms to recognize that most women don't want to have something altered for many different reasons, which I'll mention in a second. But the idea of taking something to a tailor and paying to have it altered is more difficult than if a store, for instance, offers free alterations. Then it seems that if we take the increased expense away, there's a little more willingness to have the garment altered, but oftentimes they're still not interested in having the garment altered. They would rather go without that garment and keep looking. And so the three things that tend to get in the way when you consider alterations, and you can kind of listen to these and see if there's something different that comes up for you, or if one or all of these or a couple of these. So it would be your body and money and time. So oftentimes it's, I don't have time to have things altered. I don't have time to take it to the tailor, to have, spend the time there to have them pin it up and then go back and get it. I don't have the time. And the energy kind of goes together. sometimes it is a matter of the body. I don't want to be faced with the fact that I don't love my body. I don't want the tailor kind of nipping and tucking and having to let something out, or modify a garment that I feel should have fit perfectly when I purchased it. Therefore, my body gets in the way or my thoughts about my body, my feelings about my body when I would go have something tailored that would then make the garment fit beautifully. And or it is money. And a lot of times for clients who have an ample budget for their wardrobe, this is the sticking point, because the idea of purchasing something full price, on sale, whatever, and then spending additional money to have it altered, to have it fit properly, just really they find irritating and really unnecessary. And it kind of makes them agitated and angry and frustrated. And so then they would rather not have something altered because they don't want it. All of a sudden it's made a $78 top or $128 top in Anthropologie speak into a top that has an additional $30, $40, $50 added to it. And then they wonder, well, do I love it that much to spend that money plus the alterations? Recognizing that if they love it enough to buy it full price, or whatever the price they would be paying for it, then probably they would love it more if it actually fit properly. However, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So alterations are an interesting topic, and I run into this often with clients because not everything fits everyone off the rack. That is just fact. And the reason is because every manufacturer is different. Every brand, every manufacturer brand, kind of interchangeably, I'll use those words, pulls a fit model, chooses a fit model for their brand based on a bunch of different things. Might be based on what model was available that day. They might have, hired one model and then she had the flu, and so someone else came in and her size is a little different. So that's going to change the specs for the entire line that season. Brands choose their fit models based on their brand. So if the aesthetic is something that needs, a 19, 20, 21-year-old model who is long and lanky, and that's what they choose as a fit model, and you are in your late 50s and a little curvier and only 5'2", then there is some disconnect there that is going to make it difficult for you to feel and look incredible in that piece off the rack. It does not mean that that garment that was fit on that type model can't work on you. It's just that you might have to go to a little extra trouble or a little extra effort to make that garment right for your proportions. So they choose a fit model, and usually the fit model is that sample size is small. If you've ever been to a sample sale, the sizes historically are very small and not at all the mainstream for what's happening in the world for women's sizing. Yet they choose a fit model. Okay, let's say she's a size 4 or even maybe a size 6, but probably in this day and age, more of a size 4, sometimes even a 2 and a 0. And then they grade that pattern. They create a pattern for what they've fit on her, and then they grade that pattern up and down. So if she's a 4 and they make that pattern for a size 4, then they make it smaller, kind of proportionately, according to their ideas, smaller to be a 2 and a 0 and maybe a double 0, maybe ridiculously even a triple 0. And then they grade the pattern on up to 16, 18, 20, 22, whatever size the brand goes to, they grade the pattern on up. But the thing is that somewhere in there, pretty quickly, we lose the idea that the size 4 graded up to a size 12 is actually going to fit the size 12 woman's body. That it's kind of asking a lot of the pattern and of the garment and all of that to really translate, unless it's a brand that is really, truly, authentically interested in extended sizes and in making their straight sizes and their extended sizes and their petite sizes and their tall sizes, whatever they offer, authentically fit in a way that that body needs the clothing to fit. So from the fact that we can ever find any clothing off the rack that fits our body is kind of miraculous. When we think about the fact that there's one fit model, they then kind of blow up or shrink down that pattern to fit across the masses. And then you wonder when you try the pants on why the rise is too high for you, or why the length is too long, or the seat is too big, or the hips are too curvy, and you make it mean something about you. You make it mean, oh, my hips are too full, or my legs are too short, or my tummy is a little too round and it takes up too much space. So now these pants pucker, and they didn't pucker, in the picture or on the website. It's completely unrealistic. And so first I want to just offer you the idea that you can soften the way it feels for you by really just recognizing that it is absurd that one fit model, then that pattern expanded out in both directions, is going to fit the masses. What usually happens is when I work with clients, we work really hard to find a brand or two or four or five that consistently seems to have the same type of fit and it works for that client's body. So for me, my example would be Madewell and J. Crew. Madewell does not fit me really well. The pants, the proportion isn't quite right. The shirts are usually too short for my torso. Where J. Crew, whoever their fit model is, her proportions seem, once you expand it out to be my size, to be more in alignment with my body and my proportions. There's no real reason for that. It's just that I've tried on enough clothing at Madewell and I've tried on enough clothing at J. Crew to know that the way they create their patterns, the J. Crew patterns fit my body better than the Madewell patterns. I can keep going into Madewell and be irritated about the fact that they don't fit me that well, or I can find a different brand. So in my case, I've found a different brand. The same is true for lots of other brands and the way they fit. I have done the work to recognize who fits my body type and my body shape better and more, in proportion with my figure. And I can then, purchase more from that brand than from the other brand. I also have the option to go into Madewell and decide, you know what, these aren't quite right, but I love these pants, so I'm going to take them to the tailor and have them adjust them, whatever that would mean. Usually with a top, I would have to get a top that is considerably larger than the size I would wear in order to get more length. And sometimes even then I don't get enough length. But then the armhole is too low, the neck might be too low, the bust is too big. The whole top or blouse has taken on a completely different shape. I would then need to take that to a tailor and have them kind of remake it, just leaving the length. That isn't usually worth it to me because I can find an alternative at a different brand that fits me better. So the first thing I would say is if you want to avoid alterations, know that there is likely a brand out there where the fit model and the pattern is more in proportion to your body. And the way that you figure that out is by kissing a lot of frogs, by going in and trying on a lot of clothing, by looking in your closet and looking at which t-shirts you love the way they fit and which t-shirts you don't love the way they fit. Which denim do you really love? Which denim do you not love? Which, whatever the thing is, blazers do you love? Which blazers do you not love? Because some might have a really tight armhole because the fit model has a different body shape. And so then when they expand that pattern, if they're not super mindful of paying attention to the percentage of change with the armhole all the way up the scale, you could end up in a larger size where the armhole still isn't comfortable. So there's nothing wrong with you. It is not a problem with your body. It is a problem with the industry. And yes, it's a problem. Sizing is a problem with the industry. But in addition to that, kind of even more important than that, there is no way to create one garment that across all sizes is going to fit all women. We are all so individual, and each of our bodies, even if we wear the same size, is very different. Our proportions are different. Just the way that our body is laid out is different. And that's a beautiful thing. That is incredible. That is not a problem. So we just need to learn how to navigate what's happening in the world of retail or in the world of thrifting so that we can find the garments and the brands and the clothing pieces that actually work the best for our bodies. And this is a relatively new problem. Certainly in the last generation or two, things have changed quite a bit from when my grandmother and great-grandmother and great-great-grandmothers were alive. Clothing was handmade. Even if you weren't really an amazing seamstress, you were making your clothing or you were having it made by a seamstress. And, my mom grew up, my grandmother made dresses for my mom and her sister with flour sacks, like beautiful calico fabric that were essentially sacks of flour or sacks of grain that would come to a farm. And then that was fabric that was used to make little girl dresses. There was a lot of sewing by hand that was going on, or by machine that was going on in the olden days, so to speak. And this fit model, extrapolate the pattern way out to make it fit all sizes, wasn't happening. Because if you had a garment that was maybe being handed down to you from an older sibling, it was being modified by your grandmother or your mom to fit your body. Or it wasn't, and you were just wearing it big or small, whatever the case was. So times have changed, and we now have this enormous mass-produced fashion situation happening, which means we have a lot of clothing out there, and some brands you will find fit you really well and some brands don't. And you can choose to be frustrated about that, or you can choose to step away from those brands or to have those brands altered. There's no wrong answer. It's a matter of what makes you feel better and what makes you have the closet and the wardrobe and the style that you desire. So the thing I want to mention here is that it's important to pay attention to your thoughts about alterations. This is a hot button topic that I did not really recognize how hot button it was until I was in as many closets and fitting rooms as I've been in for a while now. And I realized that women have an opinion about this. And you likely do too. You're either pro alterations and, oh my gosh, yes, of course I go have things altered. Or you're, no way, why would I spend more money? I'll just keep looking for the thing that fits right and that I don't need alterations on. And so there are some thoughts that I hear kind of on repeat from clients, and I'm just going to offer those so that you can pay attention to, are these things that come up for you when you find a garment and it doesn't fit and you consider having it altered. Oftentimes I hear that it's a waste of money, that, why would I add more cost to this piece of clothing that may or may not already be an amount that I'm comfortable spending? Now you want me to take it to someone and add another 40, 50, 60, 80, whatever dollars onto it to modify it? No, I'm just going to keep looking. Oftentimes women think there's something wrong with my body. If this piece doesn't fit off the rack, it fit my sister, it fits off the rack, my neighbor, it fits off the rack, all the women I work with, my best friend, she can just buy clothes off the rack. I always have to have things shortened, or always have to have things hemmed, or always have to have things let out. And I think that the petite world has adapted to this a little bit better than maybe the rest of the world, because they have long understood that most clothing is going to be too long for them. Most clothing is going to be too big for them. And so they're more willing to have things tailored. They don't always love it, but they're more willing. As well, brands started with petite size ranges earlier than brands started with extended size ranges. So petites have had a little more experience and kind of a little more merchandise out there that can work for their body and works to scale for them, where it's only been recently that brands are extending sizes in other ways besides petite. And so it's still a relatively untapped territory, and it often brings up there's something wrong with my body. If there wasn't, this would fit off the rack. As I said a few minutes ago, oftentimes for clients, it's that the clothing is already expensive. Why am I going to spend more money altering it? That's not necessary. It's stupid. I'm just going to keep looking. Specifically, I hear that if something is on sale or from a retailer that's not super expensive or is thrifted, it is not worth spending more money to have it altered. So if you were to find something you loved at Old Navy, most women look at it as, well, Old Navy isn't like a great brand. Like, of course I would alter a Chanel suit, or of course I would alter maybe even something from, Banana Republic or somewhere that's a more mid-range brand. But if you're going to buy something at Old Navy or at Target, why would I ever spend money to have something altered that was $25? That's absurd. And yet, what if you had that $25 blazer or pair of pants from Target altered so that they fit you perfectly if they don't to begin with, or if you don't like the fit to begin with? What if you had them altered and you wore them for seasons and just loved them? There is no rule that says a garment has to be this type of brand or this price point in order to be worthy of altering. I also see this at the thrift level. Some clients for thrift and for consignment are very willing to have alterations because they think, okay, this is one of a kind. I can't get a different size. I really love this. I'm willing to have it taken in. I work with a tailor pretty regularly. That's no problem. And the price point of thrifting or consignment being a little bit lower makes them recognize, well, I'm getting this beautiful Ralph Lauren, coat, and of course I'm willing to spend the money to have it altered, because if I had paid full price, I would have paid probably the thrifted price plus the alteration. Some women think that it is for really wealthy, affluent clients only. Like, of course, if I shopped at Neiman Marcus or at Nordstrom in the really high-end sections, I would get alterations because, those garments are so expensive and they would have to be altered to fit my body. Or if it's the mother of the groom or the mother of the bride dress, of course you have those garments altered because they somehow are more special or different than your everyday wardrobe. And the thing I want to offer there is, sorry, there's a little noise happening in my house. I'm just going to keep going. The thing I want to offer there is that if you're not happy with the way your everyday clothing fits, you are in that clothing a lot more often and for a lot more days and hours and weeks and months than you are that one mother of the bride dress. And yes, certainly you're having your picture taken and that's a special occasion, but I wish that women would spend as much time and energy making sure their everyday clothes fit and make them feel as great as that special occasion dress did, because that's what we're living in every day. So if having something altered, whether it's a sleeve length, whether it's a cuff, whether it's a waistband, having something altered will truly make you love how it looks and feels on your body. You spent the same time and energy and money creating a wardrobe that truly fits your today body really well, and you love how you look and feel in those pieces. That to me is far more valuable than that one dress for that one day that you would easily have altered, because that's just how you do it. And I want to also just mention men in here, because men don't seem to have a problem with this at all. Men buy a suit and they have it altered. Men buy a pair of pants, trousers, and they have them altered. Men buy a sport coat, they have it altered. They don't think anything of it. They have custom made clothing more regularly than women do, whether it's a shirt, a dress shirt, or a tie, or they tend to be okay with having things made for their body. They have a sense of worthiness that I think a lot of women are missing. And I see this so often with my clients, that they just don't feel like they deserve to have this extra expense in their clothing. And sometimes it's because women, again, this is a stereotype, but what I find with women is that they often have a much more kind of rotating wardrobe, where they're bringing in new pieces way more regularly than their partners are. And, husbands are usually pretty happy to be kind of wearing the same thing on repeat for a long time. They kind of shop a couple times a year, if that, and they buy pieces and have them, if they're suits or jackets, have them fit to, their body, and then they wear them for many, many seasons. Where women, it's a much more kind of cyclical, revolving door sort of thing with your wardrobe, which I have that in a sense. I'm a stylist and I am shopping pretty regularly, thrifting. It is a hobby and it is my job. And yet I also believe that if I find a piece that I love and it doesn't fit properly, I am willing to have it altered so that I can keep wearing it for seasons. I thrifted a $5, you've probably seen me talk about it here because I have many times. I thrifted a $5.99 cashmere and silk coat a few years ago. It was way oversized on me. It is cashmere, 100% cashmere on the outside, reversible to 100% silk, all black. It is fabulous. I love it. I took it to a tailor. I purchased it for $5.99. I knew it was too big. I knew it was going to need to be altered. I took it to a local tailor and I spent almost $150 having the coat remade to fit my body. I have worn it. It owes me nothing. I have worn it easily $150 worth right now. I love it. I will continue to love it. And it was well worth the investment to have it altered and have it made to fit my body. And then the last thing that comes up, as far as, that was a little tangent, but the last thing that kind of comes up from a thought standpoint is that we're embarrassed about our body. That when we think of going in and having a tailor have to look at our body and look at the garment on our body and let it out or take it in a certain way. If our bust isn't big enough to fill in the darts on a blazer and we have to have something taken in, we make it mean something about us. And if that's the case for you, I just urge you to remember that your body is perfect exactly the way it is. Clothing is designed, with no sense of making sure that it fits every person on the planet. There's no way that it could do that. So if having something altered is going to bring up feelings about your body and being embarrassed about it and ashamed of it, I urge you to start to kind of dig into that a little bit and reframe it and place the emphasis on the fact that you deserve a wardrobe that fits you, whether it's by alteration or by shopping different brands and continuing to seek, pieces that fit you better. You deserve a wardrobe that fits your body today. Okay, so now I'm going to give some kind of tailoring tips that have nothing to do with tailoring. They're kind of ways to avoid tailoring that I have learned myself, because I don't love having to take something to the tailor, same as I don't love having to take something to the dry cleaner. I understand the skill set, and I am thrilled when there's something like my cashmere coat that I really want to have tailored. And I also don't always want to have something tailored, so I am mindful to shop in a way that can make it so that that's not necessary. So here are some tips. First of all, buy knits. Knits tend to not need tailoring as much. I don't tend to shorten sweaters. If I try on a sweater and the sweater feels too long, I kind of do a quick judge of, is it going to bug me too long, or is it, I could front tuck it and it's going to be fine. And once you know that and you have the style self-trust, which is what we focus on inside Style Therapy, side mention if you are ready to grow your style self-trust so that you know whether a sweater is too long or too short in the store or just right, kind of that Three Bears, Goldilocks and the Three Bears idea. Style Therapy, there's a link down below and we can get started right away. Sweaters usually I do not have tailored. There are plenty of ways to find knits that work that will not need tailoring. It's just a more forgiving fabric, so you can usually find something that'll work without having to even consider that it would need to be altered. The next thing is belts. I wear a belt almost every single day. If I'm leaving the house, I pretty much have a belt on unless I'm wearing a dress or something that does. If I'm wearing pants, I have a belt on. Part of that is because I like my pants kind of slouchy. I like them slouchy through the seat and through the legs, and oftentimes then they're too big in the waist. So a belt solves that for me. I don't have to take my pants to a tailor. I don't take my Levi's to the tailor and have them make the waistband fit me more snugly. I don't want it really to fit me differently. I like the slouch, and I'm willing to put the belt on to keep the pants where I want them. So knits and a belt are two ways that don't require alterations, that allow you to wear clothing that might not be the ideal size on your body, but you can still make it work. The other thing with regard to waistbands on pants or on skirts where they have a button, there are buttons on Amazon that you can buy that look like a denim, like a blue jean button. They come in silver and in copper and a couple of different colors, and they come with a screw and a screwdriver, kind of like a tie tack or a post earring. You are literally adding a button. You can add a button to allow yourself to make the waistband bigger. So if you have the button here and you need a little more room, you just put the button a little closer to the edge of the pant, and then you can button it and expand the waistband. If the pants are too big, I've done this on denim both ways to make them wider and to make them narrower. You can put the button on the other side of the natural button so that you've cinched the waist by adding a button. There are extenders, kind of elastic extenders. Certainly during pregnancy, a lot of women turn to these, where you can put the elastic through the belt loop on the pants and then wrap it around the button so you have a little bit more wiggle room, if you will. So there are ways to modify clothing, whether through a belt or through some of those extenders or extra buttons, or by wearing knits. There are ways to make clothing work without having alterations. You can do elastic waist. Certainly a drawstring waist or an elastic waist is much more popular now than it ever was prior to the pandemic. So all the work from home and all of that has brought a much more comfortable shape and fabric and styling to our pants. And elastic pants often don't need an alteration, or if they need an alteration, possibly you could tighten the elastic yourself so that you've cinched it in, or put larger elastic in so that you've let it out. There are ways to work with the clothing that do not require taking them to a tailor. Length on things, whether it's the length of a blouse. You've heard me talk about shortening blouses on my little home Singer sewing machine many times. I also have been known to chop off many jeans and just fringe them and have a raw hem. You can also wear things that are looser and flowier or more snug, depending on which way the alteration would need to go. You can learn to modify your style so that you can avoid alterations altogether if you don't want to go to the trouble and the expense of alterations, or if you don't have a tailor anywhere near you and there is not a chance anything's being altered and you don't ever want to do it yourself and don't have a sewing machine and all of that. You can also wear things that are looser and flowier or more snug, depending on which way the alteration would need to go. You can learn to modify your style so that you can avoid alterations altogether if you don't want to go to the trouble and the expense of alterations, or if you don't have a tailor anywhere near you and there is not a chance anything's being altered and you don't ever want to do it yourself and don't have a sewing machine and all of that. You can just kind of tailor your style to pieces that will not need to be modified. Whether that's loose flowy dresses, great, put a belt on if you want to cinch in the waist one day, let the belt out, take the belt off if you want to not have the waist cinched one day. There are ways to manipulate your wardrobe and create an authentic wardrobe, but one that doesn't need tailoring by the pieces that you choose, the fabrics that you choose, the belts that you wear, the hems that you would chop off, the elastic waist versus set-in waist. Lots of ways to avoid having to have things tailored if for some reason the tailoring brings stuff up for you and you're not interested. And then a couple more things. So how to find a great tailor. Finding a great tailor is usually just word of mouth. As far as I'm concerned, certainly Yelp and Google are kind of the modern day word of mouth. So you can read lots of reviews about your local tailor. You can go into a major department store like Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom and ask if they have a tailor referral. Oftentimes they have in-house tailors and they don't usually alter, at least Neiman Marcus didn't alter out-of-house things in-house. Like you couldn't use a Neiman Marcus tailor for something that wasn't purchased at Neiman Marcus. But sometimes I know that Nordstrom will allow you, certainly if you buy something at Nordstrom Rack, if their tailor isn't there or is busy, you can take the garment to Nordstrom proper and they will alter it for you. A lot of brands now have, I think even Uniqlo has in-house alterations. So you might have to pay a little more or pay for it. It's not that it's a free service everywhere, but in-house they might have an alterations department depending on where you're shopping. Otherwise, I would search on Yelp and on Google, or I would ask friends who, you probably know someone who has their clothing altered, or you can ask in other stores. Anthropologie, we always had at least 2 or 3 business cards of local tailors, and we were happy to give that information out, even though we didn't have a tailor on staff and didn't offer alterations. So you want to just, from a word of mouth standpoint, you want to just ask around and then start small. Take a pair of jeans in for a hem, or go in and get a quote on, taking in a dress or letting out a dress, so that you have an idea of, whether you like the people, what the place feels like, how long the alterations would take, what the price would be, so that you can kind of guide yourself without taking a whole pile of things and then not having it be the place for you. Kind of start small. And take things in for a quote. I recently had a conversation with someone about summer shorts, that she had been purchasing shorts from one brand for many years. They were great, but that hers were starting to wear out. And now when she went to replace them, she realized that she's no longer the size that she used to be, and the size up was too big in a lot of places, even though it fit in her waist, and the size that she had been now felt a little snug in her waist. There's nothing wrong with her body. There are just some changing elements all around. And so my suggestion in that case, regardless of the price point of the shorts, even if these are shorts from Target, I would buy one in each size, the size that the waist is a little snug, the size that the waist is a little too big, and I would take them to a tailor. If you love these shorts, or you love these jeans, or you love these blazers, or you love these blouses, but now for some reason they don't fit as well as they used to, buy a couple different sizes, knowing that you can return them so that you're not investing in things that you can't ever wear. Buy a couple different sizes and take them to a tailor and get an opinion. Get an opinion and a quote on what would it cost to let this waist out? What would it cost to take the rest of the body of this piece in so that it fits the way I want it to? Because a pair of shorts purchased at Target or Old Navy or a thrift shop that are customized by a tailor to fit your body properly, you are going to wear and love for many seasons, versus a pair that really don't ever feel and look the way you want them to, that you maybe keep buying multiple pairs trying to get it right. Better to buy one pair that a tailor can make look and feel great on you and spend the extra money. But taking something to a tailor to get a quote is a really good way. We used to do this at Anthropologie. If a woman was undecided and something really needed to be modified, we would say, you can purchase it and return it, take it to a tailor, and have them tell you what it would actually cost and how long it would take and what the actual work would be that needed to be done on it, so that you can make that decision and purchase the garment and get the quote before you have any of that work done. And then the last thing I'm going to mention before I wrap this up is about alterations gone too far. There is sometimes a situation that presents itself. I've seen this with lots of clients where it's similar to kind of plastic surgery taken too far, where you've kind of modified a garment to the point where it actually doesn't look and fit fabulous for you. It's just you've gone too far, where sometimes it's women trying to get a sleeve right, and the proportion of the sleeve and maybe the ruffle or the way that the sleeve is created, once they try to modify it either larger or smaller, it kind of loses something in the translation. Or they have a jacket tailored and it's not quite right, so they have it tailored again, and it's still not quite right, so they have it tailored again, and by the time they're done, they've invested an incredible amount of money in this piece, in these jeans, in this jacket, whatever it is, and they still don't love it because it's really, truly not quite right. And oftentimes that can be traced way back to the initial purchase, where the initial purchase wasn't quite right. And if they had the style self-trust back then, they would have known that the initial purchase wasn't quite right, but they kind of talked themselves into it, or they allowed themselves to be talked into it, or they were lured by the price or the situation or the circumstance. They purchased the garment believing that an alterations person, that a tailor or a seamstress can fix it, can make it the thing that they have the vision for. And oftentimes that happens. That is totally possible. And I've seen it backfire enough that I want to mention it here, that there is something to be said of trying to take something and create something that's different enough, or that it just doesn't work with the original garment. And if you had the style self-trust in the beginning, you probably would have recognized when you first tried on the garment, I love these things about it, but I'm just not sure it could ever work for me. And you would have saved yourself the time and the energy and the money of going to the tailor and going through the motions only to then still not love the garment on the other side. So I hope that helps. I would love to know which side of the fence you are on. Are you on the, yes, of course, I always have things tailored? Or are you on the, no, of course not, I only buy off the rack and I get super frustrated when something would need to be tailored, I would have to spend that money, or I get irritated with my body because things don't fit the way I wish they did, but I don't want to have to go to the tailor, or I don't know a tailor, or I have learned to shop and really find the pieces that work for me and leave the pieces that don't, no alterations needed. If you're not already following me over on Instagram, that feels like a tongue twister. If you are not already following me over on Instagram, I would love to have you join me over there. I am showing up there more regularly. I took a little time off, kind of unintentionally, over the spring because we were moving houses and setting up a new house and unpacking and all of that just kind of took over, and it didn't seem like that was worth sharing, so I kind of backed off. However, now I am back to sharing all things style and bluegrass and new house and travel and life, and I would love to have you come join me over there. So I'm at Kristen Kane Style there as well. Style therapy, if you are ready to grow your style self-trust so that you absolutely know whether something should be altered or not altered, I would be thrilled to work with you one-on-one. So all the information for that is down below, and that's all I have for you today. I hope you have a really, really, really beautiful week, and I will see you next Friday. Thanks so much for watching.